The smoke of battle still hung in the air like a heavy blanket. Broken machines, scorched ground, and silent bodies stretched as far as the eye could see. The war between humans and the alien Zorions had left another battlefield behind, and in that silence one man moved carefully. The human soldier, Corporal Daniel Hart, walked through the ruins with cautious steps. His armor was scratched and dented, his weapon carried low but ready. He was tired, his muscles sore, but his eyes stayed sharp. He had been separated from his unit during the chaos of the fight, and now he was searching for any signs of survivors or threats. The field was quiet, yet not at peace. Crows of the alien world, small winged scavengers with metallic feathers, circled above, waiting to feast on the fallen. Daniel ignored them. He had seen too many fields like this. The sight no longer shocked him, but it still weighed on his chest. He stopped when he heard something faint. At first he thought it was the wind. Then he heard it again, a soft, broken sound. It was not human. His training told him to stay alert. Slowly, he moved toward the sound, stepping over twisted wreckage and fallen weapons. There, half buried under the remains of a destroyed transport, lay a figure. It was an alien, a Zorion warrior. Daniel stiffened. The Zorions were tall, strong beings with sharp features and armor that gleamed with pride. They had fought humans for years, and their reputation was one of ruthless strength. But this one was different. She was lying on her back, her lower body pinned beneath broken metal. Her chest rose and fell with difficulty. Her once bright armor was cracked, her weapon shattered at her side. Her long silver hair, tangled with dirt and blood, framed a face that was both fierce and weary. Her eyes opened slowly, and for a moment Daniel felt the weight of her gaze. Even weakened, those eyes carried the fire of a warrior. He raised his weapon by instinct. She was the enemy. He had been taught that mercy was dangerous on a battlefield. A wounded enemy could still kill, but she did not reach for a weapon. She only looked at him, her lips trembling as if trying to speak. Finally, in a rough, pained voice, she managed a word in broken human tongue. "Kill me." Daniel froze. She was paralyzed. He could see it now, the way her legs did not move, the way her body seemed trapped. The wreckage had crushed her spine. She was alive but broken, left behind by her own army. For a moment he thought about walking away. It would be easier, safer. His orders had never included helping the enemy, and yet, something in her eyes stopped him. They were not filled with hatred or rage, but with something else, something that almost looked like despair. He lowered his weapon slightly. "You're hurt," he said. His voice was steady, though inside he wrestled with confusion. "Your people, they left you." Her lips pressed together. Shame flickered in her expression. For a Zorion warrior, being left behind was worse than death. She turned her head slightly, as if she no longer cared whether he stayed or went. Daniel knelt beside the wreckage. Against his better judgment, he pressed his hands against the metal and tested its weight. It was heavy, far too heavy to lift alone. He clenched his jaw. "If I leave you here, you'll die. Slowly, that's not right." She let out a dry, bitter laugh that turned into a cough. "Die is better. No walk, no fight, no honor." He shook his head. "Maybe for your people, but humans, we don't leave others to die, even enemies. Not if we can help it." Her eyes widened slightly. She seemed to study him now, as if trying to understand this strange kind of honor. For her, strength was everything. For him, humanity was. Daniel pulled a small water canister from his pack and held it near her lips. At first she turned her face away, pride battling with need. But thirst won. She drank slowly, and he saw a bit of life return to her expression. "You help?" she whispered. "Yeah," he said simply. "I'll help." He looked around. The battlefield for tools. Pieces of broken steel, Shattered parts of machines and scraps of armor lay scattered everywhere. Using what he could find, he began to build a lever to move the wreckage. His hands grew raw, his arms ached, but he kept going. Sweat ran down his brow as the metal finally shifted a few inches. The alien warrior gasped in pain as the weight lifted slightly from her body. Daniel pushed harder, gritting his teeth until he managed to drag her free. He quickly checked her condition. Her legs were limp, unresponsive. She was paralyzed from the waist down. She knew it too. Tears, sharp and angry, welled in her eyes. A warrior of her kind was nothing without strength. She turned her face away, humiliated. Daniel pulled out a medical kit from his belt and began to treat her wounds. He cleaned the cuts, bandaged the bleeding, and stabilized her as best as he could. His hands were careful, steady. "You don't have to do this," she whispered. "I know," he replied, "but I won't leave you here. Not like this." For a long moment there was silence. Only the wind moved across the ruined battlefield. She finally spoke, her voice softer now. "My name is Kaylara." Daniel looked at her. A name that meant trust, at least a small piece of it. He gave her a nod. "Daniel." Their eyes met again. Something unspoken passed between them. Two warriors, once enemies, now bound by a strange twist of fate. As night began to fall, Daniel dragged pieces of wreckage together to form a shelter. He started a small fire with what little fuel he could find. The glow lit their faces, and, for the first time, Kaylara allowed herself to close her eyes and rest. Daniel sat nearby, weapon across his lap, watching the shadows. He had made a choice that might cost him everything, but deep inside, he knew it was the right one. The paralyzed, alien warrior had no hope left, and yet with a human soldier by her side, a new story was about to begin. The night stretched long and cold on the ruined battlefield. Daniel sat near the dim fire, eyes sharp, rifle resting across his knees. Every sound made him tense. The war might have passed this place, but danger always lingered. Scavengers, patrols, or even wild creatures could appear without warning. Behind him, Kaylara lay still, her body wrapped in the rough blanket Daniel had pulled from his pack. She stared at the stars above the torn roof of their shelter. Her people believed the stars were ancestors, watching, judging. Tonight she felt their judgment heavy. She had once been a warrior who carried the honor of her clan. Now she lay broken, rescued by the very enemy she had sworn to defeat. In the silence, she finally spoke. "Why, help me. You risk in your life." Her words in human tongue were slow, shaped by effort. Daniel turned his head slightly, his face calm. "Because I could not leave you there. You were alive. That was enough." Kaylara frowned. "Zorians, do not think this way. Weak are left behind. Only strong continue." Daniel shook his head. "Humans think different. To us, leaving someone behind, even an enemy, makes us weaker. Saving others makes us stronger." She studied him, her sharp eyes filled with confusion. It was not weakness she heard in his voice. It was conviction, strange conviction, but strong. When dawn came, Daniel stood and stretched his stiff muscles. He gave her water again and forced her to eat a ration bar, even though she resisted. "You need strength," he said. She chewed slowly, her pride wounded more than her body. Finally, she asked, "Do you not hate us?" Daniel looked at her, seriously. "I don't hate you. I've seen enough war to know hate solves nothing. We fight because we're ordered. But when I saw you there, I just saw someone suffering. That's not about enemies, that's about being alive." Kaylara turned away, unsettled. Her people never spoke like this. To them, compassion was weakness. Yet this human soldier seemed to carry it as if it was his greatest weapon. Hours passed. Daniel began searching the wreckage for useful supplies. He found scraps of metal, broken electronics, and a few energy cells. With these, He tried to craft simple tools. He used metal rods to form a makeshift stretcher, lining it with cloth from destroyed tents. He worked with steady hands, determination clear in his movements. Kaylara watched. "Why build this?" "To move you," he replied. "I can't carry you across this wasteland in my arms forever. This will help." She raised a brow. "You plan to take me with you?" "Yes," Daniel said firmly. "I can't leave you here. You'll come with me until we find safety." Her chest tightened. Zorian pride urged her to refuse, to tell him she would rather die. But another voice, quieter yet stronger, told her she wanted to live. She wanted to see what future lay beyond this humiliation. Finally, she nodded once, silent acceptance. Daniel lifted her carefully onto the stretcher. She gritted her teeth but made no sound of pain. Her warrior's pride demanded silence. He tied the straps and tested the weight. Heavy, but manageable. They moved slowly through the broken landscape. Daniel pulled the stretcher across dirt and rubble step by step. The sun burned hot overhead, sweat rolling down his neck. Yet he did not complain. Kaylara, lying still, broke the silence with questions. "You fight long time?" 3 years, Daniel answered. "Too long." "You have family?" Daniel's eyes flickered. "Back home, a sister. She worries. I promised I'd come back." Kaylara was quiet for a long while. Then she said softly, "I had a brother. He died in battle. He would not like me living like this." Daniel slowed but did not stop. "Maybe. But maybe he would be glad you're still breathing. Life is not shame. Giving up is shame." His words struck her deeply. She had believed death was the only way left for her, yet he spoke as if life itself was still victory. By evening, they reached the edge of a ruined forest. The trees here were twisted and half burned, but they offered cover. Daniel built another small fire, careful to keep the smoke low. He shared food again, though supplies were growing thin. This time Kaylara ate without protest. Afterward, she asked, "Human Daniel, why do you fight? What drives you?" He poked the fire with a stick. "Not glory, not hate. I fight because I want peace. Because if I survive, maybe one day we won't need this war. Maybe one day kids won't grow up hearing gunfire." She stared at him, astonished. Her people fought for honor, conquest, and the pride of their clans. She had never heard a warrior speak of peace as a goal worth bleeding for. For the first time, she wondered if humans were not as weak as her leaders claimed. Perhaps they were strong in a different way, strong in heart. That night, as the fire crackled, Kaylara whispered almost to herself, "You are strange for an enemy." Daniel gave a tired smile. "And you're strange for a warrior. But I think we'll make it." Days passed. Each morning, Daniel searched the area for supplies, while Kaylara slowly adapted to her new reality. He crafted wooden supports that allowed her to sit more upright. He even taught her how to use her arms to handle a light human pistol. At first, she resisted, embarrassed, but soon she practiced, hitting makeshift targets Daniel set up. "You, see?" Daniel said. "You're not useless, you're still dangerous." She allowed herself the faintest smile. "Perhaps not as weak as I thought." Slowly, an unlikely bond formed. Their conversations grew longer. She told him about Zorian traditions, the songs sung before battle, the codes of warriors. He told her about Earth, about simple things like rivers, mountains, and the smell of fresh rain. One evening, as stars filled the sky, she said quietly, "If I had met you before this war, maybe I would not see humans as monsters. And if I had met you before," Daniel replied, "maybe I'd see Zorians differently too." Their eyes met, and for a moment the battlefield between them seemed to vanish. But danger was never far. On the 5th day, distant sounds of movement echoed through the forest. Daniel froze, listening. Metal footsteps, voices in a harsh alien tongue. Kaylara's breath caught. "Scouts!" she whispered. They search battlefield. Daniel tightened, his grip on his weapon. Then we stay quiet. If they find us, we fight. She lifted the pistol he had given her, her hands steady despite her condition. I fight with you. For the first time since her injury, her voice carried pride again. Not in her old strength, but in her new resolve. Daniel nodded. Together, then. They lay in silence, the fire smothered, the night tense. The bond between human and alien, once impossible, had become their only hope of survival. And as the scouts drew closer, Kelara realized something that shook her heart. The human soldier who had once been her enemy was now the reason she still wanted to live. The night was silent except for the crunch of footsteps on fallen branches. Daniel's ears caught every sound, sharp against the quiet forest. He pressed himself low to the ground, rifle steady in his hands. Beside him, Kelara lay flat, pistol ready. Her breathing was slow and controlled, the way of a trained warrior. The voices came closer, harsh and metallic. Daniel understood none of the words, but Kelara's tense expression told him enough. They were Zorian's scouts, moving in a pattern she recognized. They were searching, hunting survivors. They will find us, Kelara whispered in her native tongue. Then, switching to rough human words, she added, We must fight. Daniel's jaw tightened. He glanced at her, lying half-hidden under branches he had pulled over her stretcher. Can you fire? Her chin lifted proudly. I can. Daniel nodded once. Then wait for my signal. The fire they had shared earlier was gone, smothered to ash. Shadows wrapped around them as the scouts came into view. There were 3 of them, armored in dark Zorian steel, rifles glowing faintly at their sides. They moved with discipline, scanning the ground, sweeping their weapons. Daniel's heart pounded. He had faced Zorians before, but never with odds, this sharp. Alone he might have tried to slip away, but with Kelara, escape was impossible. Survival meant standing their ground. The first scout paused near the remains of their small fire pit. He crouched, fingers brushing the still warm ashes. He called to the others. Their heads turned as one. Daniel's grip tightened. No more hiding. He raised his rifle and fired. The first scout collapsed, his weapon clattering to the ground. The other 2 reacted instantly, shouting in their language, rifles flashing. Sparks burst from the trees as energy bolts struck bark. Daniel rolled behind a fallen trunk, returning fire in controlled bursts. Beside him, Kelara steadied her pistol with both hands. Her aim wavered at first, but she forced herself still. With a sharp exhale, she fired. The shot struck one of the scouts in the shoulder, spinning him around. Daniel finished him with a second burst. Only one remained. The last scout shouted angrily, firing wildly. Daniel ducked, splinters raining over him. Then Kelara's calm voice cut through the chaos. Now! Daniel rose, fired once more, and the final scout fell silent. For a long moment, the forest was still again. Smoke curled from Daniel's rifle. He lowered it slowly, scanning for movement. Nothing. He turned to Kelara. Her pistol rested in her lap, her arms trembling slightly from the effort, but her face was steady, her eyes burning with pride. You did it, Daniel said softly. She exhaled, a small smile forming at the edge of her lips. I fight. Again. Daniel gave her a short nod. And you're still dangerous. The words were simple, but Kelara felt them like a shield over her wounded spirit. For the first time since her injury, she had fought not as a broken warrior but as someone still capable of shaping fate. Together, they moved quickly. Daniel dragged the fallen scouts into the shadows, hiding their bodies beneath brush. He collected what supplies he could, energy packs, ration cubes, and a small blade. Every piece might mean survival later. When he returned to Kelara, she was quiet, staring at the dark trees. They will return, she said. Scouts do not walk alone. More will come. Daniel crouched beside her. Then we keep moving. We'll head toward the mountains. If we can cross them, we'll find human outposts. Kelara tilted her head. And if more come? He looked at her firmly. Then we fight again. Together. Something softened in her gaze. For years, she had fought beside her people. Yet in her darkest hour, it was an enemy soldier who stood at her side. They traveled by night, Daniel pulling her stretcher across rough paths. Kelara stayed alert, pistol ready. Though her body was broken, her spirit sharpened with every step, and dawn they reached a ridge overlooking the valley. Smoke rose in the distance, perhaps from the last battle or perhaps from another. Daniel paused to rest, sweat dripping from his brow. Kelara watched him, noting the strain in his shoulders, the exhaustion in his eyes. Why risk all this for me? She asked quietly. You could move faster alone, you could survive easier. Daniel sat down beside her, breathing hard. Because walking away would have killed something in me. Maybe not my body, but something inside. I couldn't live with that. Her throat tightened. She had grown up hearing that humans were selfish, weak, cowardly. Yet here sat one, bleeding and tired, carrying her weight without complaint. She whispered, "You are not what I was told." He looked at her with a faint smile. "And you're not what I was told either." The moment hung between them like fragile glass. Different worlds, different wars, yet bound by survival. That night, as they built another hidden camp, Kelara insisted on helping. With her strong arms, she gathered branches and even sharpened sticks into crude weapons. Daniel watched her, impressed. "You don't stop," he said. Her silver hair caught the firelight as she looked at him. "I am still warrior. I cannot walk, but I can fight, I can build, I can live." Daniel nodded slowly. "Good. Then we're a team." She repeated the word softly as if testing it. Team. For Zorians, a team was clan, blood, unbroken, warriors. For her now it meant something new, partnership beyond enemies. Before sleep took them, Daniel checked the supplies once more. They had food for 2 days, maybe 3. Weapons enough for a fight, but not for a war. They needed to move quickly. Kelara, lying on her side, whispered before closing her eyes, "If I fall again, do not leave me." Daniel's voice was steady. "Sure. I won't." The next morning, movement in the valley proved Kelara right. More Zorian forces had arrived, sweeping the land with machines and soldiers. Daniel cursed under his breath. They would need to take longer paths, through cliffs and ravines. The journey grew harder. Daniel's strength was tested with every step, but Kelara refused to be only a burden. She kept watch, warning him of tracks, signs, and even traps left by her people. Her knowledge saved them more than once. At one narrow pass, the sound of engines roared above them. A patrol ship skimmed the sky, lights sweeping the ground. Daniel pulled the stretcher under a rocky overhang, holding his breath. The lights passed, but the danger remained. Kelara whispered, "They search harder now. They know humans survived. They know." She paused. "That you survived." Daniel finished. Her jaw tightened. "To them, I am shame. To be left alive, paralyzed, and now aided by human, it is worse than death." Daniel met her eyes. "Then we'll prove them wrong. You're not shame. You're proof that strength is more than walking." Her chest tightened again, this time with something she could not name. Was it hope? Trust? Whatever it was, it gave her new fire. That night, after another day of narrow escapes, Daniel leaned against a tree. Exhausted, Kelara studied him in silence, then said softly, "You fight for peace. You fight for me. Perhaps I should fight for you too." Daniel looked at her, surprised. "You already do." The words warmed her heart more than any fire. The war had left her broken, abandoned. Yet in the company of a human soldier, Kelara began to see herself not as discarded, but as reborn. Together, they faced danger. Together, they gave each other strength. And as the stars shone above, she realized the truth. Her hope had not died on the battlefield. It had been carried into the night by a human who refused to leave her behind. The mountains rose higher with every step Daniel pulled the stretcher. The air grew thinner, the wind colder, and sharp rocks cut the path into narrow trails. Days of travel had drained his strength, but he pushed on, his jaw set with quiet determination. Kailara watched him closely. Every pull of his arms, every drop of sweat that rolled down his face made her chest tighten. She had fought beside warriors of her people, but none had shown this kind of endurance for another's sake, especially not for an enemy. One evening, as they rested in a cave hidden from the valley below, Kailara broke the silence.
"You carry me as if I am your own blood. Why?" Daniel leaned against the cave wall, catching his breath. "Because leaving you would make me no better than the ones who abandoned you. And because I don't see you as my enemy anymore." Her
eyes widened slightly. "Not enemy?" "No," Daniel said firmly. "You're Kailara, a warrior, someone worth saving. That's enough." The words stirred something deep in her. She had been left behind by her people, discarded like broken steel. Yet here, in the dark of the cave, a human soldier spoke as if her life still carried weight. Before she could reply, a faint sound echoed through the cave entrance. Boots on stone, voices carried by the wind. Kailara's body went rigid. She recognized those voices at once. "Zorian patrols," she whispered. "My people." Daniel moved to the entrance, peering into the night. Torches bobbed below the cliffs. Dozens of figures marched in formation. Their armor gleamed in the moonlight. This was no small scouting party. It was a full search unit. Kailara's heart pounded. They know survivors are here. They seek me. Daniel turned back to her. "Then we move higher before they find this cave." But she shook her head. "No. They will smell the fire. They will track the stones. They will find us." Daniel clenched his fists. He had faced Zorian warriors before, but against so many, survival was impossible. Kailara's gaze hardened. "Listen, Daniel. If they find us, you must leave me. They will not harm you if you surrender. But me, they will call me traitor. They will end me." Daniel knelt beside her, his voice low but firm. "I'm not leaving you. Not to them. Not to anyone." Her eyes locked with his. She saw no fear there, only steady resolve. A human soldier, tired and wounded, ready to stand against an army for her. The voices outside grew louder. Shadows flickered on the cave walls as the patrol drew near. Daniel quickly dragged Kailara's stretcher deeper into the cave behind a jagged wall of stone. They waited, silent as the patrol entered. Torches lit the cave mouth. Dozens of armored Zorians stepped inside. Their leader, barking orders, Kailara's breath caught. She recognized the leader, General Venos, a towering figure with golden armor. He was her clan's commander, the very one who had ordered her left behind. Her hands trembled. Pride and shame twisted inside her. "Search," Venos commanded. His voice echoed like thunder. The soldiers fanned out, torches lighting every corner. Daniel gripped his rifle tightly, ready to fire if they came closer. But Kailara raised her hand. "Wait," she whispered. Daniel looked at her in disbelief. "What are you doing?" Her face was pale but steady. "I must choose." She wheeled herself forward, her arms strong as she pushed the stretcher out from the shadows. Gasps filled the cave as the Zorians saw her. "Kailara?" One soldier cried. General Venos stepped forward, his golden eyes narrowing. "You live. I left you to die, yet you live." His gaze swept over her broken body, then to Daniel. And with a human, murmurs rippled through the soldiers. Disgust, shock, betrayal. Kailara's throat tightened. This was the moment. She could beg forgiveness, return to her people in shame, and Daniel would be spared. Or she could stand with the one who had refused to abandon her. Daniel's voice cut through the silence. "Don't say anything you don't want to. Whatever happens, I'm with you." His words steadied her heart. She lifted her chin, meeting Venos's glare. You left me, she said clearly, her voice carrying across the cave. Crushed, broken, paralyzed. You abandoned me because I could not walk. But he, this human, carried me, fed me, fought beside me. He saw me as more than broken steel. The soldiers shifted uneasily. Venos's face darkened. You dare shame your clan by praising an enemy? Kilara's voice grew stronger. Enemy? No. He is more loyal than those who left me. He is more warrior than those who judged me unworthy to live. The cave filled with stunned silence. Daniel's hand tightened on his rifle, ready for the order of execution. But Kilara was not done. I choose him, she said firmly. If honor means abandoning the weak, then I reject that honor. If strength means leaving behind those who fall, then I reject that strength. I choose a new path. I choose loyalty, not pride. And I stand with this human. The soldiers erupted in shouts, some furious, others shocked. General Venos raised his hand, silencing them. His eyes burned with rage. Then you are no Zorion, you are nothing. Daniel stepped forward, placing himself between Kilara and the general. Then she's nothing with me, he said coldly. The standoff was tense, every soldier's weapon raised. But Venos did not attack. Instead, he sneered. Take your shame, Kilara. Take your human. Run to whatever fate awaits. You are no longer of this clan. He turned sharply, signaling his soldiers to leave. Their torches faded into the night, their voices echoing down the cliffs. When the cave was quiet again, Kilara sagged back against her stretcher, her body shaking. I am cast out. Daniel knelt beside her. No, you made a choice. You chose what was right. That's not weakness. That's strength. Tears stung her eyes, but she let them fall freely. You gave me courage, Daniel. Without you, I would have stayed silent. I would have died in shame. He placed a hand gently on her shoulder. You're not alone anymore. Not as long as I'm here. The fire crackled softly in the cave. Outside, the stars shone bright, watching. Kilara, once a proud warrior, now a paralyzed exile, had chosen loyalty over tradition. And in doing so, she found a new strength. Not in the clan that abandoned her, but in the human who refused to let her go. For the first time, she felt the weight of freedom. And with Daniel beside her, that freedom no longer felt terrifying. It felt like hope. The night after Kilara's choice was long and heavy. The cave felt both safe and empty. Safe because the Zorian patrols had left without attacking, but empty because Kilara knew she no longer belonged to her people. She had spoken her truth and rejected the old code. Now she was an outcast. Daniel stayed awake for hours, sitting near the entrance with his rifle ready. He could feel her eyes on him, sometimes questioning, sometimes grateful. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet, but steady. You did the hardest thing tonight, he said. You stood up when it mattered most. Kilara turned her face toward the shadows, her silver hair falling across her cheek. I stood up, yes, but not on my legs. I am still broken. Daniel shook his head. No, you're stronger than most warriors I've ever met. You lost your legs, but not your spirit. That's what matters. She did not answer right away. Instead, she looked at the stars visible through the cave mouth. Once, she had believed those stars judged her every action. Now she wondered if they had guided her to this moment, into the path of a human soldier who refused to abandon her. The next morning, they began their climb deeper into the mountains. Daniel's strength was nearly at its limit, but Kilara refused to let him carry her weight alone. Using her arms and the supports Daniel had built, she insisted on helping push herself forward, inch by inch. At first, her movements were clumsy, but slowly, with Daniel's guidance, she grew more confident. When she faltered, he was there to steady her. When he stumbled from exhaustion, she encouraged him with sharp words. You are soldier, Daniel. Do not fall before me, she said once, making him laugh despite his fatigue. Through struggle, they became partners, not human and alien, Not soldier and enemy, but two survivors moving as one. Days turned into weeks. Together, they built small shelters in the rocks, hunted for food, and shared stories. Daniel told her about his childhood, about how he learned to fish in quiet rivers back on Earth. Kailara listened with fascination, picturing a world of green forests and blue water instead of endless war. In return, she told him of her people's traditions, songs sung around fire pits, stories of great warriors, oaths sworn before battle. But she also spoke of the flaws she now saw. We worship strength too much, she admitted. We forget that loyalty, kindness, and courage are also strength. Daniel nodded. Maybe that's why you and I met, to teach each other. Their bond deepened with every passing day. Where once Kailara had seen shame, she now saw resilience. Where Daniel had once seen only an enemy, he now saw a friend, perhaps more than a friend. But the world outside did not stop for their bond. Patrols grew thicker in the valleys, and human forces were also pushing into the mountains. Both sides, hunted survivors, both desperate to claim the land. Daniel and Kailara were caught in the middle, belonging to neither. One evening, as the sun set behind jagged peaks, Daniel spotted smoke on the horizon. That's human, he said. An outpost. Kailara's heart tightened. Then you are safe. You can return to your people. Daniel looked at her seriously. And leave you? No, I won't. She lowered her gaze. If your people see me, they will not welcome me. I am Zorion. To them, I am enemy. He crouched beside her, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. Then I'll tell them the truth, that you saved me as much as I saved you. If they can't see that, then maybe they're blind. Kailara's chest warmed at his words, though doubt lingered. She had chosen him over her people. But would his people choose her? The next day, they approached the outpost carefully. Human. Soldiers in gray armor patrolled the gates, weapons sharp and ready. As Daniel stepped forward, pulling Kailara with him, the soldiers raised their rifles. Halt! One shouted. Identify yourself. Daniel lifted his free hand. Corporal, Daniel Hart, 2nd Division. I've been separated from my unit. The soldiers lowered their weapons slightly, recognizing his armor. Relief flashed across their faces. Then their eyes fell on Kailara. What is that? One of them demanded. Why are you bringing an alien? Daniel's jaw tightened. She's with me. She's not enemy. She's my ally. The soldiers exchanged uneasy looks. Murmurs spread quickly. A human soldier returning with a Zorion was unheard of. The commanding officer stepped forward, his face hard. Corporal, explain yourself. Daniel stood tall, though exhaustion weighed on him. This is Kailara. She was abandoned by her people, paralyzed, left to die. I couldn't leave her. She fought with me, kept me alive. She's no enemy. She's proof that there's more to this war than killing. The officer frowned, studying Kailara. She met his gaze without flinching, though inside her heart pounded. Finally, the officer spoke. Very well. She stays under guard until command decides. But if she makes one wrong move, she won't. Daniel interrupted firmly. They were allowed inside. Kailara was placed in a secure tent, but Daniel stayed close, never letting her feel abandoned again. In the days that followed, Kailara became a quiet symbol. Some soldiers stared at her with suspicion, but others began to see what Daniel saw. When she used her sharp eyes to spot enemy movements from afar, saving a patrol from ambush, respect grew. Slowly, whispers spread of the alien warrior who had been saved by a human and who now gave her strength to protect his people. One evening, Daniel entered her tent and found her staring at her hands. What are you thinking? He asked. She looked up at him, her silver eyes steady. I was left to die, Daniel. But you gave me life again. You gave me a reason to fight even without my legs. You showed me that strength is not only in body but in heart. Daniel smiled faintly. And you showed me that even enemies can become family. Her lips curved into a small smile. Family. She repeated the word softly, as if tasting its meaning for the first time. Weeks later, human command arrived. Officers inspected Kalara, questioned Daniel, and studied their reports. After long debate, they made a choice that surprised many. Kalara would not be treated as a prisoner. She would stay under protection, allowed to live among the soldiers, so long as she continued to prove her loyalty. It was not full trust, but it was a beginning. Kalara accepted with dignity. She would not beg for honor anymore. She would build it anew. And beside her, Daniel stood, his presence a constant reminder that she was no longer alone. The war around them still raged, battles rising and falling across the stars. But for Kalara and Daniel, something greater had been born, a bond that crossed the lines of enemy and ally, of strength and weakness. On one quiet night, as the camp settled into sleep, Kalara whispered to Daniel, "I was left to die, but you gave me hope. You gave me life again. Whatever comes, I will not forget." Daniel looked at her with a steady gaze. "And I'll never let you be left behind again." The stars shone above, silent witnesses to a new story. A paralyzed alien warrior and a human soldier, bound not by war but by loyalty, trust, and the will to live. And in that bond, Kalara was no longer broken. She was reborn, a warrior not of her clan but of a new path, forged with the human who refused to leave her behind.